Is audio working here?
It is, Richard.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, audio is apparently working. I see Martin is offline, which is a great start. Let's give him a moment to reconnect.
So Zulip, it does exist, but it's not in the Meet Echo window. I have not heard anything from tech reporting.
Is that why we have no chat here?
Yeah. So there is a Zulip chat for HPKE. They created it last night, but it's not linked into the Meet Echo feed. Magic, right? I told them about 5 minutes ago, I guess. I can't.
I guess everybody then collaboratively takes notes in the note-taking tool.
That's really a very good idea, Stephen. I like that.
Sounds like we have a volunteer for Scribe. Thank you, Stephen. You're okay with taking notes?
He meant everybody.
I can take notes of actions and things like that, sure.
Thank you.
I will try and record the blow-by-blow.
So maybe the first thing to put in the notepad is what the link is to the chat room.
You are brilliant. Hold on a minute.
So Yaroslav, if you or Martin could just paste in the agenda into the note-taking things, that would help me out if you want me to take notes. But if you have it handy, if not, that's okay.
Yeah, I've got audio now. So I will do that. The agenda is pretty straightforward. We're going to look at the open issues on both of the drafts. Richard's here. I think we have some interesting ones on the core draft here. And I will get those to you, Stephen, very quickly while Richard takes over. You're able to take over, Richard? Would you like me to present issues?
I might suggest we do PRs before we do issues, because I think most of the issues are covered by PRs.
Sounds good. We'll do the core draft first. I'll get screen sharing going. Okay. Very basic stuff. Now, do you think we should talk about the errata? Or do we want to just point out that these are fixes?
I mean, if anyone has why don't we do like a little, has anyone looked at these and does anyone have comments? Otherwise, I think we should just merge them. They're all tiny stuff. Has anyone looked at the errata PRs and has anyone have comments on them?
There you go. I have a comment. These are very small. I think this is a 1 or 2 word change in this case.
Yeah. Yeah, I've mostly been instinctively rewrapping things as I go. Sometimes has that effect.
So the effect of these, just for folks following along, is just to do the most obvious change implied by the erratum itself. I'll take people on a tour if we haven't got any comments. Chris?
There's no chat, which is hilarious.
I know.
I have looked at all these. I think it's fine to merge them, but you can also cycle through them if you wish.
The chat link is in the notes tool. I put it on the top line, but it won't be in Meet Echo. It'll be separate.
Oh, of
But I'm
course,
sure
that's
managed.
better in some way, probably.
Better.
I'd be sarcastic, but thank you.
This is what happens when you spin up a working group on the fast.
We should know better.
All right. So description of the third parameter. And here we go. A paragraph explaining something that was agreed on in the erratum. And finally, the last one of these is changing from fields to parameters and adding a description of info as it is passed into the KDF. Okay. This next one is largely mechanical. Observing that this is not the document to be creating them. 9180 created the registries, and this one is asking IANA to shift a pointer. Oh dear, this one's going to be real hard. Yeah. I don't know why that wasn't part of the boilerplate changes. I guess we just missed it. Okay, here's where it gets interesting. Richard, do you want to walk us through the basic theory that you're operating on here?
Yeah, the theory here is that the KDF API we defined in 9180 presumes a two-stage KDF as of basically the same shape as HKDF. In fact, I'm not sure anyone has registered anything other than HKDF. So it's allegedly generic, but actually looks just like HKDF. With SHA-3, there's a variety of things that are usable as KDFs and don't require two invocations, or it's the same two stages. So what this PR does is wherever those stages are referred to separately, replaces them with, writes out a comparable algorithm that uses a single invocation of the single stage KDF. And of course, it defines that single stage one as an interface. The main interesting bits here were exactly how to arrange the inputs. I don't see Ilari on the call, but he provided a bunch of helpful input on how exactly that should be arranged. Because there's, to avoid ambiguity, there's some length prefixing stuff going on. No magic here. It's just arranging bits that go in.
Yeah, but I think the key point of contention was one of the stages here where inputs, I think it was this piece and combining the secrets here that was most interesting. So the single stage KDF here is the addition. The previous one looked like this, where you would extract, expand on everything. And this takes those secrets in a very particular order with length prefixing for very particular pieces of that.
Right. So that's replacing, as Martin said, the kind of pre-hashing of some of the inputs with length prefixing, so that you can do everything all in one go. So this one is a little bit complicated, but I think it's worthwhile to get good efficiency out of some of the SHA-3 primitives, which are defined in the PQ document, despite SHA-3 not really being a PQ issue. And I think after the degree of this review, this got on the CFRG list. Sorry for I don't think that happened on the HPKE mailing list. There was already some discussions on the CFRG mailing list going on, so we shanghaied that discussion. With all the feedback we got there, I think this is in pretty good shape, but I would love to have concurrence from someone else who has looked at this.
Who's had a look?
Been out there for weeks, people. Wood.
I looked, I guess a question. Previously, I don't think we had length restrictions on any of the input parameters here. So like the PSK ID info or whatever, and this does now impose an upper bound on the length. That seems fine. Like the upper bound is huge for basically every conceivable application. I don't recall. I was just looking through the PR if we note that new limit somewhere. Might be worth noting that this is different from the other version. Otherwise, I think it's fine.
I'm looking at it now. I think I raised this question on the CFRG list because I wanted to use SHA-3, so I'm happy to see this. Looks pretty good to me. I have to go dive into the background comments and review, but looks pretty good to me. I'm happy to see it.
Yeah, to Chris's point, just for folks' awareness, the length prefixed function that's on the screen there uses 2 byte lengths. So the maximum input lengths are 65K, which, should be enough for anyone. Sorry.
Something for a PSK, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, maybe there's some someone's using a PSK ID to wrap something. Maybe it gets big, but it seems like most plausible use cases should be fine with the 2 byte length. But yeah, I'm fine adding a note to just make that explicit.
I think perhaps the only one that potentially is large is the info structure, if you were pulling in context from something else that was significant in size.
Yeah.
We have chat, by the way.
I noticed that.
Isn't that amazing?
I thought Deb was in queue to comment on our charter, which says we must be bit exactly compatible with RFC 9180. And
I'm busy.
but the out here is that this is new functionality. And so we don't have to be compatible. So the length restrictions only apply if you're using a single stage KDF, in which case
Which
you're
would be a new suite.
overlapping with 91.
Does that lets you be in charter?
It lets us step around the restrictions that are in the charter.
Okay. I'll check.
Please do.
The charter specifically lists the addition of PQ, PQ traditional, and single stage KDFs as potential things that can be added here.
And for those new things, we don't have to maintain compatibility.
I mean, I'm fine with you being in charter, however that works. I just wanted to point out that we have a chat.
Which we're also very delighted about, thanks to whoever made that happen. Right. As long as everyone sort of understands what's going on in this pull request, I will move on to the next one, which I believe.
So just to capture actions on this,
Yep.
we have an action to add, and actually let me just record this on the pull request. The action item is to add add a note about the length restriction. And then I think we're clear to merge. Unless folks want to hold this for any further review. There's always working group last call if we merge something slightly inappropriate. Okay. Martin, did we cover the IANA one already?
Yes, we did. So the next and the final one for this draft is your sketch of the auth modes one, and this is where I think probably we want to not have text on the screen, but start with a discussion of the motivation and so forth, and give people a chance to sort of discuss the pros and cons.
Yeah, this PR is literally minutes old, so I hope you've all had a chance to review it. I just realized before this call that this was the one issue we didn't have a PR against. So I took a quick hack through. I think I covered all of the pros, the specification part of the document, and I just didn't get to removing test vectors. So this should indicate the changes that would be necessary to remove those modes. Question is whether we ought to do this. I see Corey Myers, and I'm expecting him to be in the queue.
Go ahead, Corey.
Happy to be. Thanks for the discussion so far on the long list about this. We would love to see auth, in particular auth PSK, remain for our hybrid needs. That said, I've spoken with at least one implementer of a library currently implementing RFC 9180, who's expressed their intention to continue supporting all the 9180 modes, even if some are removed from the final HPKE standard. And I think that's at least interesting sort of in terms of the process in bringing this from the CFRG informational draft into the IETF process, but also just wanted to flag that there is both active implementer support and a downstream use case that would like to see these modes remain.
Chris Wood asks in the chat if you could name implementations you're talking about.
Yeah, I spoke last week with the Crispin team maintaining HPKRS on top of libcrux.
Yeah, so thanks for raising it, Corey. Yeah, I think the fact that RFC 9180 continues to exist kind of eases my concern about removing these. People can continue to refer to it as long as they don't care about whether something is a standards track RFC. And if they do, I think what I would actually suggest is that we bring this back. We propose rechartering this group and making an extension so that's more clearly an extension, and it's clearer that the base standards track RFC just relies on standard CAM interface.
I'd support that and be happy to contribute to that work. And in particular, one advantage of that path, Richard, is that it would let us preserve in some form the fix for erratum 7790 that we just looked at on screen, which I think is important for framing what security properties these modes do and don't have in practice, which is very much part of our choice of them, but we understand needs to be framed more correctly in whatever the final document is.
So I guess I have a question for Corey. Are you concerned about the lack of post-quantum support for those auth modes?
For the authentication properties specifically, no. Our goal is to use the MLChem output as the PSK and auth PSK. And we're satisfied with the P confidentiality that provides, and the post-quantum authentication is not within our threat model.
That makes sense. Sounds to me like we're converging on a plan here.
So you don't have to take this out, right?
We don't, but some folks thought it would be a useful streamlining.
Because the charter says may decide.
Well, and now we're deciding.
Exactly. So you may decide not to take it out, in which case it's not a charter update. And would he get post-quantum for free?
Well, that's part of the reason I think that it's good to take out, because it complicates the post-quantum analysis, because there aren't any post-quantum chems that have this property right now. Corey, I think Corey's comments on the list about post-quantum are really interesting and valuable, but they do complicate the picture more.
Okay. But you have leeway here.
Yeah, we do. And now we are making the decision that we've allowed ourselves to make in the charter. Stephen, did you want to comment, bring that up from the chat?
Yeah, basically, I just want to support the idea of getting rid of these if we can. And if there's anything else we can get rid of, let's do that too, because the 9180 has kind of too much stuff that didn't really get used very much. I think that's a fact that we should deal with. And getting rid of those is part of dealing with that fact, I think.
It sounds to me like what we need to see here is a write-up to get the details and get folks like Corey to review all of that. Mike.
Hi. So as context, both of the Jose and the Coze HPKE drafts after the last IETF meeting removed support for the stuff we thought wasn't being used, this being part of it, to simplify the drafts. So I believe that the editors of both of those drafts would support removal. And as long as I have your attention, I will say that working group last call for both the Coze and Jose HPKE encoding drafts entered working group last call on Wednesday. It's another 2 weeks, but this community is probably a set of interested parties in looking at that. We've already had one clever implementer point out that the Jose examples were out of date, so we'll fix that. But this is why you do working group last call.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Is there any other comments on in or out?
So that sounds to me like support for forging ahead with this. So I will get the PR updated and notify the list when it's ready to go.
Thanks, Richard. I think with that, we're safe to move on to the other topic. The post-quantum piece. Oh, look, support for single-stage KDFs. Does this mean someone's going to use them? So that's what this pull request does. It registers some code points for the KDF. Shake 256, turbo shake 256.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of options here. So would be very interested in what folks think about which KDFs based on SHA-3 make sense here. I was kind of surprised to learn how many variants there were in this space when I looked at it. But I think there is, to Stephen's point about usage, I think there will be consumers for this. Like the next thing we're going to do after we get this HPKE stuff firmed up is do the MLS PQ cipher suites. Since those are going to rely on MLChem, they'll have SHA-3, and so I think we'll probably rely on SHA-3 in this case as well for the KDF bits. Pedro?
Yeah, I like to see Shake and Turbo Shake. I know Turbo Shake is not as widely available as the Shakes, but if you are able to use it, I think there's a lot of confidence there, and it gives you performance improvements without any, any hits on security. Probably would be good to see the SHA-3s explicitly in there too. Yep, looks good.
You mean?
Yep.
To be clear, Deidre, you mean just bare SHA-3?
Yeah. Yeah, like SHA-256. I don't know. I mean, maybe someone will need SHA-3 512, but
So this so the interface we've defined for single pass KDFs requires an output parameter.
Okay.
Parameter.
okay,
So
then
just
never
using
mind.
the SHAs doesn't quite make sense. This is really an XOF. Like the single stage KDF is really an XOF.
Okay, then yeah, then never mind. I mean, like you literally twiddle Shake in the specific way, and you get SHA-3. So yeah, okay.
Yeah, everything's just Ketchak, or however you pronounce that. What?
Do we know who wants to use Shake versus Turbo Shake? Or is it just sort of opportunistic allocation of good points?
It's a good question. Go ahead, Deidre.
I definitely have, related to this, I have an application that I would use I would use Turbo Shake in if I'm allowed to use it. But that's me and my little toy constructions. So
Yeah, I think Turbo Shake is good. I was just looking at VDAF, and they settled on Turbo Shake as their preferred off. So I'm wondering, given that the registration policy is so flexible and permissible, if we just pick one and then let people down the road allocate Shake or whatever if and when they want it.
The only thing that gives me pause about that is that I don't know how wide the availability is of TurboShake, and so there might be
Yeah.
Yeah, me
or
neither. I don't
Shake
like.
still the main option.
Does boring SSL have it?
I don't think so. For example, the Python cryptography library does not have TurboShake. They do have regular Shake.
Does that okay? Okay, on that basis, I'd be fine with both then. Like if
Yeah.
it's a matter of like Shake is so more widely supported, but TurboShake's a little bit better performance-wise.
Yeah, definitely. Like TurboShake is great. It's good for performance and security, but it's not as widely deployed because it's not in FIPS 202. Shake is in
Yeah.
FIPS 202, so it's just I think downstream of that.
Is TurboShake RCJet or is it still draft?
I think it's still IRT draft.
Dear Lord, okay. That's not a blocker. I was just curious.
Yeah,
In which case, this is good.
last updated this past February.
Okay. Maybe this will move it along.
We can always try. Quinn?
Yeah. Okay, so Quinn, did you have a comment?
Thank you. I was just saying it was in the editor queue and it should be out soon. And also the TurboShake, the interface and the way it is designed are potentially very usable in some of the applications down the road. So I think it would be good to have that available. And I think in the future there will be a lot of more use of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like there's room for both here, and it's a big registry, so there's not a whole lot of cost. We can have the fight when we get to the MLS level list, which we use there.
Sounds good. All right, seeing the queue empty and reaching a natural lull, we have the next one. Oh, the fun one. PQT.
Yeah, so this is, let's say, provisional. It matches, so just to remind people of the stack of standards we have here, CFRG has a hybrid chems draft. The one that's published as an internet draft has both a generic scheme and some concrete constructions. We're currently in the process of splitting that into a generic draft and a concrete draft. And then this document defines how the identifiers for using the concrete draft in HPKE, and thus the mapping between the generic API that the CFRG draft uses and the HPKE interface. Really pretty straightforward. What's in here matches the content of the concrete draft as of 96 hours ago or so. There's been a little bit of thrash in there. So this is sort of provisional, waiting for those CFRG drafts to settle. So I think at this point, I would kind of give another few weeks for those drafts to settle before we look at merging this. But this should give, I think the only real thing we would expect to change is basically the names of the constructions. And so if folks think we need more text here, need more explanation, now would be a good time to lay that out. Thoughts?
I just had a question on like expectations. So is it the expectation that whatever lands on the concrete chem draft we'll put in here, or like where will the opinions sort of be made as in terms of like what are the ones worth allocating code points for?
So this working group and CFRG are procedurally independent groups that can make independent decisions.
Yep.
As is MLS. So we actually have 3 different loci of decision making. I think that MLS is looking for basically the same 3 combos that CFRG commissioned the hybrid design team to look at, namely, Martin, your typing is a little noisy. P256 plus MLChem, X25519 plus MLChem, and P384 plus big MLChem. So I would expect, so MLS, I think, wants those. I believe CFRG is defining those, so we should, I would argue we should flow those through. If CFRG decides to add anything in addition to that, we can have a discussion here as to whether we want to make HPKE identifiers for them.
Okay, that's fine. That I think matches my expectation.
Okay.
Absent other information, what we have right now is 3. Does anyone think that that's unreasonable?
And just to give the reasoning for those 3, there's basically the all NIST medium security level, all NIST high security level, and medium security level for people who like Curve 25519.
Also, the last one is X-Wing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. As of, I believe, this afternoon, that combo now maps exactly to X-Wing. Deirdre?
Yeah, these 3 that we're currently talking about, and we have to push up on Data Tracker for concrete, all use SHA-3 as their KDF function. So if anyone needs something that doesn't have SHA-3 on the outside of MLChem, all of these combos use MLChem as their post-quantum chem component, let us know, because we are operating on removing the only combo that previously used HKDF SHA-56 as its KDF function, because we thought somebody needed it, and we don't think that that is any longer the case. So let us know if HPKE needs a non-SHA-3 KDF to implement these hybrid chems. Otherwise, we'll be doing SHA-3, 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 etc.
Yeah, in particular, if anyone is a big fan of CNSA 2.0, which has some slightly less than passionate words about usage of SHA-3, and you're concerned that would impede usage of this without a SHA-2 alternative, speak now, or we're going to define SHA-3.
All right.
So I am no longer that person for you, but I would take that to the list, please, because those people aren't on this call.
Yep.
Okay. See, I think this is the main PR that's just going to kind of float for a little bit until the CFRG docs settle a little bit more. But I expect in the next, I don't know, month, 6 weeks, those should be getting pretty firm, and we should be about ready to lock it in.
Just a quick response to Deb. No objections to taking it to the list. Seems fine to do. But since we're talking about like what is usable in HPKE, I would expect the people who do have opinions about well, what would be usable in HPKE, be it something that's not SHA-3 based for the hybrid chem, to show up here and advocate for it. So if they're not here, perhaps we should encourage them to be here to advocate for it, because otherwise we have no obligation to do it just because they want it in CFRG.
Well, I think they can show up on the mailing list as well, Chris.
They can. I mean, that's permissible by law, I suppose.
In fact, the mailing list rules, right?
Yeah.
I mean, worst case, we'll have a working group last call on this. They'll have a few weeks to comment.
Yeah, I was just mainly saying that this is primarily, as the working group title suggests, about HPKE and not about other chem application protocol that is not HPKE that might need SHA-2, which I don't even, do those even exist? I don't know. They obviously do, but I'm sarcastic.
So MLS is a huge consumer of HPKE, but also encrypted client hello for TLS 1.3. I don't want to, start throwing new ideas at the stage, but is there any desire for something that's not SHA-3 for HPKE use in encrypted client hello? We were just talking about Turbo Shake for a different KDF that's in the guts of HPKE for its KDF, but it could also be used for constructing these hybrid chems in the CFRG document. So if anyone has any strong feelings about that sort of thing, please contact the CFRG hybrid chem authors or go to the CFRG list. That's all.
That's a good point. Do we intend to make TLS and MLS aware of these decisions, as they will impact those applications? I mean, obviously, Richard, I think you know a thing or two about MLS, so you might let those people know.
I was going to say, we're continuing the theme of it being multiple appearances of the same people.
I mean, I've noticed that David Ben is not here, for example, and he might have opinions on what TLS does. But we should probably let them know.
Yeah, it certainly seems like if when someone sends out email about SHA-2, we could also forward that over to the TLS and MLS lists and see if anyone has any comments there.
Right. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our list of open pull requests. I believe that's also 1-for-1 with the issues that we have, more or less. This draft has no real issues, but only pull requests.
There is one issue on the PQ draft. That there is. You filed it, and I disagreed with you and proposed we close it, won't fix. But we could ask if other folks have opinions.
We could, yes.
So the suggestion from Martin here was that, I think this may have been proposed in the list as well, that we have some guidance to people about when they should choose PQ or hybrid. This seems like not our business. People have their motivations, and it's not our business to say, especially not in any detail. Like we could hand wave something about, ooh, the PQ one might fail, but they're going to be doing CNSA, or they'll be doing whatever else, and they'll be guided.
Yeah. And given that this is a fairly hotly contested area, it may be sensible for us to avoid it entirely.
So I say we close this unless someone wants to advocate for it.
Would we have options to add other stuff in other documents, like MLChem only, to register them?
MLChem only is already in here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind.
Already in there when we did the adoption call.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be more in the camp of disliking the non-hybrid things especially in this hybrid case, I guess. We're mixing hybrid and pure with HPKE and non-hybrid. I think there's a reasonable argument to say that they're to be made for only having PQT and that being a sensible choice and not being silent on it. Now I would argue not to close this just yet, but discuss it on the list some more and see who turns up, because people do turn up to discuss this topic and probably will in future as well.
May I speak a little bit here?
Go ahead.
Yeah, we have seen the discussions between BQ and BQ hybrids over the years, and they have been very long and exhausting, and there's no mathematical formula to decide which one is clearly the better choice than the other. they both have their pros and cons. And of course, whenever, you know, a debate happens again, you know, people go all in for whatever side they are on, and because that's what they believe in. So it's, yeah, it's very painful, and I don't think we would have a very definitive, you know, clear scientific, you know, answer for that question.
Yeah, but I think that's yet another, the fact that that this discussion is happening in a bunch of other places as well is yet another reason not to do it here.
I got to disagree with that. I mean, I think this is a discussion that keeps coming up, but it keeps coming up for a reason. And I think, personally, I think the reason is that the justification for pure PQ is wanting. And it could be, especially in a context like this, in this kind of middle ground layer above a crypto API and beneath the protocol APIs, that this is perhaps the right place to distinguish between these things and say one is seemingly better than the other.
All right, we have an issue. I'm seeing two sets of arguments for the removal of those things. I thought we'd litigated this during the creation of the group, but we have the time. Make the case.
I'd argue that you can register anything you like. You don't have to use the things you don't like.
And I'm confident in the post-quantum alone ones, and I also am confident in the hybrid ones. They're both secure to be used.
I'm just trying to make sure I understand what the ask is. So originally the ask was whether you put guidance in about the risk of using Pure. The Pure has been in the charter since the beginning, right? So the first comment, the first part of this was back when you were looking at the issue was what kind of guidance do you give in the draft about the risks, if any, of just using Pure and HPKE, right? Now, are you opening the door to not including the Pure MLChem in HPKE? Or are we still litigating the do we put guidance in or not?
I think some folks have said, at least in the chat, that they would like to discuss that second point. Oh, okay. So Stephen Farrell clarifies that he was not asking to omit it. I think Martin Schanzenbach was proposing that maybe we omit the pure PQ ones. But I think from what I'm hearing, maybe Martin is in the rough.
So as your AD, I would expect to have something in security considerations that might talk about, just as we have for a lot of different topics, right? Randomization, all sorts of stuff, right? So that you might put something in the security considerations to talk about why you would or wouldn't use Pure.
As individual contributor, HPKE, from my perspective, is used in a wide range of different applications. It's a reasonably low level. It's not a protocol. It's used in protocols that run over internet and used in many proprietary things. So it feels to me that having a strict guidance that should equally apply to all the use cases might be a little bit short-sighted. And surely there is something that we can refer to in PQIP that talks about pros and cons of hybrids versus pure, and keep this in the somewhat dedicated working group.
So it sounds like the question of whether we have non-PQT, just pure PQ chems, is more or less resolved, depending on the answer to this next question, which is the bike shed paint shop.
Well, just on the last point, so from Deb's comments, it sounded like she would expect the standard hand wavy text about the difference between pure and hybrid.
Yes.
Okay, so I'll put a note to that effect on the issue.
No, thanks, Richard. I will open this issue up for discussion now, see if we can make some progress on it. Yeah, content-free disparaging, I think, is probably right. There are reasons we did this in TLS. It may be that those reasons do not apply in HPKE, to Yaroslav's point about being very low level. I'd like to hear now, while we have the time, where people stand on this particular issue. Don't all jump at once. Come on, Rich.
I'm willing to accept that I'm willing to believe that HPK is different enough from TLS that it doesn't need a recommended column, but that should probably be addressed in some text in the IANA considerations thing, similar to what Yaroslav said about this is low level, it's going to be determined by upper level applications. So that once we decide, then we don't have to revisit it every time somebody new comes to look at the draft.
All right. Thanks, Rich. Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, maybe it comes down to whether HPKE is kind of seen as a feature of a crypto-like library that gets released as a thing, and that therefore comes along with certain sets of algorithms that are supported in that release, versus whether HPKE is hidden beneath an MLS released thing. I think that might be where there's a difference here. And I think certainly for something that's, in the case of OpenSSL, they did add HPKE as a thing by itself. And it came with a bunch of algorithms and a bunch of modes and so on. It's at that point that I think it would be better if things like an OpenSSL release didn't necessarily come with, or certainly didn't default to a pure PQ thing.
OpenSSL libraries are free to make whatever choices they make, regardless of what we say in any document or in a registry.
Sure, and we're free to give them advice to help them along and do a better job as well.
I'm looking at the existing CFRG, HPKE, IANA tables for chems and everything else. They just have code points and all the properties and the reference. They do not have anything about recommended or anything like that. So I think we've done okay without it so far.
Just to respond there, but I mean, to date, there's been only extremely well-known differences between the effectiveness of the different code points. That is no longer the case when you have pure PQ and hybrid PQ, I don't think. We
have all of them registered right now.
I'm not arguing against registering. I'm saying that in 9180 in the registries at that point, pretty much everything had well-known effectiveness compared to each other. We understood there was a length difference. We understood otherwise things were equally strongish. Now, when we have the difference between hybrid or pure, we have a different category of difference.
How would you characterize that different category, Stephen?
Riskier is pure.
Well then,
So I love a good low energy debate as much as anyone.
Well, I feel like there's good energy here. So I mean, to be clear, I would close this with no action. I would not add a recommended column. And I think that was what Deirdre was saying as well. So I don't know. Does anyone besides Stephen think we really need this column?
If you don't have the column, you have to explain why, I believe. And I'm fine.
I'm not aware of any rule that says, like, Iana's not going to make you explain why.
Okay, fine. I believe if you don't have the column, you should explain why.
I think Yaroslav captured it pretty well.
That's fine, but put it in the doc, in the Iana considerations.
Yeah, I don't agree that having a recommended column is the default. That happens to be what TLS did and one or two other protocols, but that's not a universal pattern.
I understand, but if it's different enough that you, okay, fine, you're going to make the decision and everyone's going to come back and ask, and that's okay. Not my time being wasted.
We can document it on the mailing list. That's also archived. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Speaking for the other protocols, Jose has a recommended column for algorithms. Jose has a recommended column for algorithms. TLS has a recommended column for algorithms. I believe it was Sean Turner, then acting as an area director, who gave us specifics of what to say in the Jose one. So I actually agree that the default for algorithms should be that we should say things about which of them are recommended to implement to increase interoperability. And if you put, I was going to say if you put the issue in the chat, but there is no chat. Can somebody message me the issue?
The chat is back. Don't you have the chat thing at the top of your Meet Echo thing? The chat is back.
Oh, now there is a chat. Okay. Thanks. I will say that on the issue. Thank you.
thanks, Mike. It sounds like this one is one that we'll have to take to the list. I'm hearing not a whole lot of strong push in either direction, aside from Stephen and Richard, who both take opposite positions on this one. So we'll discuss a little more, but we'll be putting an end to it at some point, one way or the other, even if it requires a dice roll. And we'll try to make our deadlines. Is there anything else that people think is necessary to discuss here? I'm just going through the issue list, and all of this. Let's talk about this one. Want to speak for it, Rich? No, Rich just dropped.
Yeah, I think we need more color on this from Rich, because as it's written, it sounds like a nice venue for free-form editorializing.
Yeah, and I don't see this as necessary, but oftentimes that's down to the original creation of the registry as to whether there was something to be said at the registry level about particular algorithms. Where in this case, I believe with specification required, you've got a whole specification to put comments in. So it might not be necessary. Okay, well.
Mike Jones is in queue.
Mike. Or not. Okay. I was about to move on. And by moving on, I mean calling an end to the meeting. I have no more issues that we have to discuss. We have a plan for some of these things and a couple of things that were things we would take to the list for discussion. Pending resolution on those issues, which I expect to have happen over the next couple of weeks, we will look forward to revisions of the drafts that resolve those issues after that point.
Yes, just to be clear, I'll go through and merge all the issues that we had agreement on, and we'll the ones that had a couple minor things, I think I will maybe revise and send a notification to the lists, give folks a couple of days to comment.
Yeah, I think the main things was there was a note on the two-stage or the single-stage KDFs about length restrictions.
And
there was
about naming in the chat.
And some tweaks to naming and structure and things like that. That seems all fair. The auth and auth PSK modes were ones that I think required a little bit more discussion before we would resolve, but we would try to get a suggestion from our editor in the next little while, and we can discuss what that looks like once that comes together. We are not chartered to split the documents apart, but we can possibly decide to do that if that was the right thing to do. I think the general guidance on working groups is that they deliver the work. They don't necessarily have to deliver it in one piece. So we could potentially decide to split the work off, where the piece that's split off, we may still decide not to deliver. That'll be up to that discussion. And then I think the only other thing that we had here was this discussion here, which we will confirm on the list about the choice between PQ and PQT. I think the proposal there was to at least describe what the properties are of the two of them, so that the difference is obvious, but only at a very high level, nothing more than, if you do the pure ones, then you've got one algorithm. If you do the two of them, then either one of them can break and you still remain secure. That would be, I think, the level of discussion that would be attached to that. Very, very high level. The CFRG drafts go into a lot more detail, and we don't need to recapitulate all of that detail in these documents, but we should probably say at least the minimal. With that, I think we're at the end of our agenda, and we can give 20 minutes back to all the fine folks who helped. Stephen.
Sorry, Martin, just for taking notes, you said the editors are going to do some merges, you're going to poke for trying to get discussion and agreement on a couple of things, and then you said something else and I missed it. What was it? It was like, what was the goal or something?
So the goal here is over the next couple of weeks to resolve all of these issues and get revisions of the drafts out.
Okay, just so revisions before the IETF Madrid kind of thing. All right, and thanks.
Yeah, I think we can manage that. We've got a month. Some of that depends on the CFRG work being completed, but I understand that's moving along quite well. Okay. Any other final business? I am going to call it. Thank you, everyone. Very productive meeting.
Thank you. See you next time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Madrid.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.